The main character in our story today is a young model from Ukraine. She traveled thousands of miles to the United States to chase her dream. At first, it seemed like she had found both love and stability, a wealthy boyfriend, and even the gift of a child, promising the beginning of a happy life. But fate took a tragic turn. After just one night, she was brutally murdered. The crime was so shocking in its cruelty that many compared it to the infamous Black Dahlia case. To this day, it is still remembered as one of the most disturbing and merciless crimes in Los Angeles history. You're watching my channel, where together we dive into the most mysterious and chilling true crime cases. As always, before we begin unraveling today's mystery, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to support us. Now, let's rewind the clock back to 2016 and uncover the tragedy that shook the city. What exactly happened that year? And what drove the killer to commit such a cold-blooded act? Los Angeles, a dazzling city in the southwest of California, the second largest in the country and a hub of commerce, finance, and culture. It's a place everyone recognizes from the spectacular Hollywood blockbusters that have captivated audiences worldwide. Los Angeles is the birthplace of Hollywood itself, home to legendary films that shaped generations of filmmakers. And it is here, in this city of angels, that today's tragic story unfolded. Iana Cation was a 30-year-old model living in Los Angeles. She had deep, soulful eyes and long, flowing black hair. Born on the 27th of January, 1986, in the capital city of Kiev, Ukraine, she grew up in an ordinary family. While little is known about her early childhood, people who knew her described her as kind, well-behaved, and remarkably bright from a young age. Her parents placed high hopes in her education, investing everything they could into Iana's future. Iana worked hard and excelled in her studies. She eventually graduated with a degree in law and secured a stable job at the National Tax Agency. But even during her student years, she showed a strong passion for fashion and modeling. After all, Ukraine is renowned for producing some of the world's most stunning models and beauty icons. That environment gave her opportunities to step onto the runway. With her striking looks and balanced figure, Iana often took part in fashion shows outside of her regular job. Even though the modeling world in Ukraine was highly competitive, Iana still managed to achieve success and slowly shine on the catwalk. With her promising career and happy life back home, staying in Ukraine would have been an easy choice. But she wanted more. Deep inside, she dreamed of a bigger stage, greater challenges, and a life beyond borders. For her, that dream destination was the United States. In 2014, at the age of 28, Iana finally made the leap to pursue her lifelong dream. She boarded a plane to America, heading straight to Los Angeles, the glamorous hub of entertainment, film, culture, and art. A city perfectly suited for someone with modeling ambitions. The endless beaches and golden California sunshine captivated her heart. Iana promised herself that she would stay, build a life, and create a family in this new land. With years of runway experience, Iana quickly found modeling work. Her career began to stabilize. Some reports suggested she also worked as a translator, but either way, she managed to secure her life in Hollywood. For Iana, the picture of her new life was almost complete. All it lacked was love. If she could meet the right man, the kind she had always dreamed of, everything would be perfect. Fate has a way of working when least expected. At a party, Iana was drawn to a man named Blake. He sat quietly in a corner, wearing glasses, reserved and seemingly detached from the crowd. Yet somehow, sparks ignited between them. Their connection grew quickly, and soon, Iana and Blake fell deeply in love, eventually becoming engaged. Iana was overjoyed with Blake, not only because he came from a wealthy family, but also because he was intelligent, talented, and deeply devoted to her. Before long, the couple welcomed a beautiful baby girl into their lives, whom they named Diana. To better help care for the baby, Iana invited her mother, Olga, from Ukraine to Los Angeles. Wanting to give the young couple their own space, Olga rented an apartment just a short distance away from her daughter's home. For Iana, life seemed picture perfect. A devoted fiancé, a beautiful baby daughter, a home, a car, financial security. Happiness was just beginning to blossom. But behind that perfect picture, tragedy was about to strike without warning. On May 25, 2016, an overwhelming sense of dread gripped Olga. She couldn't reach her daughter. Iana wasn't answering her calls, nor was she replying to messages, something completely out of character for her. Anxious and fearing the worst, Olga brought a friend and went to her daughter's apartment in West Hollywood, at 8500 North Holly Drive Ave. Iana's car was parked in the Gara, but no matter how long they knocked, no one came to the door. From the street below, Olga glanced up toward the balcony window and faintly spotted a man's figure inside. It looked like Blake, but when she called out for him to open the door, he ignored her and shut the window. Growing more frantic, Olga had no choice but to call the police. 2 officers from the Los Angeles Police Department soon arrived at the scene. After knocking repeatedly and getting no response, they explained that they couldn't legally force entry. Instead, they contacted the building management to get Blake's phone number. But when they called Blake, the call went straight to voicemail, no answer. With nothing else they could do at that moment, the matter had to be set aside for the time being. Worried sick, Olga sent her daughter a desperate message. "My dearest, are you still alive? I came to your home, but no one opened the door. Please answer me. I know he's keeping you in there. I've already called the police." When no reply came, Olga called the police again. This time, when officers returned and again received no answer after persistent knocking, they realized the situation was far more serious than they first thought. The lead investigator discovered something troubling. Iana's phone had been used to order food online at 1:48 a.m. on May 25, and again at 3 a.m. on May 26. Hallway security cameras even showed someone stepping out from the apartment to pick up the food deliveries. It was bizarre. Clearly someone was inside, so why didn't they answer the door for the police? Why ignore the phone calls? Neighbors also confirmed they hadn't seen anyone enter or leave the apartment for 2 days. With Olga's testimony added to the evidence, police began to suspect that Blake might have done something terrible to Iana inside the apartment. There was no time to waste. The officers contacted building management for a spare key, but when they tried it, they realized the door had been bolted shut from the inside, impossible to open the normal way. With no other choice, the police decided to break the door down. Once the door gave way, the apartment was pitch dark. The officers entered cautiously, searching the living room, dining area, kitchen, balcony, and all common spaces, but nothing unusual appeared. That left only 2 bedrooms. When officers tried to open the guest bedroom door, they discovered it was blocked by a mattress, an obvious attempt to keep anyone from getting inside. But that wasn't enough to stop the police. Once they forced the door open, the room was empty. But on the headboard, they noticed faint traces of blood, an unsettling sign that something bad had happened. That was the moment the officers realized something terribly wrong had taken place here. They rushed to the master bedroom. The door was locked from the inside. One officer kicked it hard, but behind the door, furniture and a mattress had been piled up to barricade the entrance. The officers called out. A low male voice came from the other side. "What do you want?" The police immediately recognized the voice. It was Blake Libel. If they forced their way in, he might do something reckless. So instead, they tried to keep the conversation calm and steady. One officer said, "We just came to find Iana, nothing else. Don't worry." Blake replied, "My girlfriend's sick. She's in Cedars-Sinai Hospital, just nearby." He even gave them a bed number, trying to sound convincing. The police didn't buy his story for a second, but he refused to come out, refused to say more. For Iana's safety, they couldn't risk breaking in blindly. And so, the standoff dragged on. Usually in the movies, this is where a professional negotiator would step in, but in reality, it wasn't the police who made the breakthrough. It was Green, Blake's friend and accountant. After some patient, friendly words, Green finally persuaded Blake to come out. He emerged wearing nothing but white underwear, looking exhausted. His face was scratched and bruised, his arms covered in marks from a struggle. On his left chin and arm, there were even clear bite marks, evidence of a desperate fight. The officers quickly restrained him and moved into the master bedroom to search. As they entered, one officer shouted in shock. What he saw left him shaken. It was Iana. She was lying still, no longer breathing. Later, during the autopsy, doctors uncovered something horrifying. Iana Cassian's body showed signs of extreme trauma. Her skin was pale, her body weak from massive blood loss. She had suffered devastating injuries, the kind too disturbing to describe in detail. It was the sort of scene no one wanted to face directly. The cause of death was determined to be severe head trauma, leading to catastrophic blood loss. She had been dead for at least 10 hours before officers found her body on May 26, 2016, inside the West Hollywood apartment. The coroner concluded that after the attack began, Iana endured unimaginable suffering for 6 to 8 hours. The brutality was on par with some of the most notorious crimes ever recorded. Just the thought of it left people breathless. The forensic doctor, who has decades of experience, shared, "I have been in this profession for decades, but I have never encountered a case like this. I believe that almost no forensic doctor or pathologist, domestic or international, has ever witnessed a similar case. This is an extremely cruel and rare case." Police uncovered a large number of clues inside the apartment. Traces of blood remained on the mattress, headboard, carpet, towels, and curtains. In the bathtub of the main bathroom, they discovered blood stains and strands of hair. Inside the trash can, a razor blade with both blood and hair was found. Everything pointed to the apartment being the actual crime scene. From the relatively small amount of blood visible, it was clear that the place had been cleaned thoroughly. Using luminol, investigators detected hidden stains on the carpet near the bed, in the main room, and in the bathroom. From the trail of evidence and the fact that Iana Kazian had lost a significant amount of blood, detectives believed she had been dragged from the bedroom into the bathtub, where much of the bleeding took place. Outside the building, police also found 11 garbage bags in a public dumpster. Each bag was filled with blood-soaked towels, bed linens, and blankets. On one bedsheet, there was a clear, bloody handprint. Lab results later confirmed that all of the blood and human remains discovered belonged to Iana Kazian. As for the person responsible for this horrific tragedy, there was no doubt it was her boyfriend, Blake Leibel. Even though he had showered and cleaned himself, bite marks on his body and skin fragments found under his fingernails matched Iana. Under Iana's nails, police also found traces of his tissue. The bloody handprint on the bedsheet was missing part of the pinky finger, which matched the fact that Blake's right hand also had a partially missing pinky. Taken together with all the other evidence, his guilt was undeniable. But the question remained, why would he commit such a cruel act against his own girlfriend? Blake Leibel, born in 1981 Ontario, Canada, was far from ordinary. His father, Lorne Leibel, was a wealthy real estate mogul in Canada. The real estate company run by Lorne Leibel, Blake's father, was once among the wealthiest developers in Canada. Beyond business, Lorne was also a competitive sailor who had represented his country at the Olympics and was later honored in the Canadian Sports Hall of Fame. Blake's mother, Eleanor Chittel Leibel, came from another affluent family that owned a globally recognized plastics manufacturing company. This meant that Blake grew up in luxury, with wealth at his fingertips. However, being part of a rich family did not shield him from personal turmoil. When he was young, his parents argued constantly and eventually separated. Afterward, Blake lived with his mother, while his brother Cody stayed with their father. The strained distance only deepened the rift between Blake and his father. In 2004, after graduating from college, Blake moved to Los Angeles. Even though his family allowance could have supported him without ever needing to work, he wanted to build something for himself. With Hollywood's booming entertainment industry, he decided to try his hand there. Fortunately, Blake wasn't without talent. From a young age, he had been fascinated with video games and comic books, interests he also studied more formally at school. In 2008, Blake helped produce the animated series Spaceballs. The animated series. By 2009, he directed a short film titled Bald, and in 2010, he released a dark graphic novel called Syndrome. During his years in Hollywood, Blake certainly didn't waste time. His career flourished, and he established himself as both a director and a graphic novelist. In his personal life, Blake was just as active. In 2006, he met model Amanda Braun. Friends described Amanda as a party-loving woman who was often seen at Hollywood gatherings. At one such event, she met Blake. He struck others as a bit unusual, someone who enjoyed social scenes but also carried himself in a strangely humble, even innocent way. That uniqueness made Amanda quickly fall for him. The two began dating, though their friends weren't optimistic about the match. After all, one loved the nightlife while the other preferred staying home. By 2011, Amanda became pregnant. The couple got married, and soon after they welcomed a child, which brought some happiness to their small family. But the differences they once overlooked soon became glaring in daily life. Frequent arguments revealed just how incompatible they were. Friends' warnings seemed more and more accurate. They probably should never have been together. Eventually, the couple separated, though they never legally divorced. That same year, Blake's mother passed away from cancer, leaving behind an estate worth around 12 million Canadian dollars. Blake assumed he would inherit the majority, but the will only granted him a few million, with most of it going to his father and brother. This infuriated him to no end. He even suspected his father had tampered with the will, though eventually the matter faded away. From that point on, Blake harbored deep resentment toward his father, and the two became bitter enemies. Around this same period, he met Iana Kassian, a young woman from Ukraine, and their relationship developed quickly. Blake kept his marriage a secret, and when Iana eventually discovered the truth, he covered it up by claiming he was already in the process of divorce. In reality, he did want the divorce, and by July 2015, while Amanda was pregnant with their second child and close to giving birth, Blake finalized the proceedings and moved out of the house. In August 2015, Iana also became pregnant. Everything moved quickly. Blake didn't waste a single moment. Iana moved into his condo in West Hollywood, California, where she could focus on her pregnancy. To her, life felt like a dream come true. Blake seemed perfect, wealthy, showering her with love, buying her a Mercedes, gifting her a diamond ring, even purchasing a home. With their baby on the way, it felt like the perfect foundation for a bright future together. Iana Kassian had achieved her dream of starting a family in America. In April 2016, she brought her mother, Olga Kassian, from Ukraine to Los Angeles to help care for the baby. On May 3rd, their daughter Diana was born. Wanting to give the young couple space, Olga rented an apartment nearby to be close enough to help with the newborn. At first, everything seemed perfect, but just 2 weeks later, Iana reported to police that Blake Leibel had forced himself on her. On the surface, their troubles seemed to stem from this, but investigators didn't believe it was enough to explain a brutal crime. Friends described Blake as someone with no criminal record, from a wealthy background, and set to inherit a fortune. Why would he throw it all away? After his arrest, Blake repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, claiming he was innocent and insisting that science would eventually prove it. Yet every shred of physical evidence pointed directly to him. So what was the truth hidden behind it all? After digging deeper and reviewing messages between Iana and her mother, police uncovered another side of Blake Leibel, a side completely different from what his friends had described. In reality, both Blake and his brother, Cody Leibel, had been involved in gambling for years. Cody played high stakes, almost like a professional, sometimes winning or losing millions of dollars. As many say, gambling can wipe a person out, and Cody was no exception. He had racked up massive debts. Those debts tied him to dangerous people. Blake often worried that his brother's choices would bring trouble upon the family. On top of that, Blake himself was heavily into marijuana and other substances. He had a history of lashing out at both his ex-wife and girlfriends, only to beg for forgiveness later in a tearful, regretful manner. After Iana became pregnant, the tension in their relationship only worsened. That was one of the reasons Iana asked her mother to stay and help with the baby. She cared deeply about the relationship and hoped that by having her mother's support, she could heal the distance between her and Blake through moments of intimacy and connection. But the plan failed. Just days after baby Diana was born, Blake's mood spiraled downward. He became irritable, pulling the curtains shut and smoking heavily inside their West Hollywood condo all day and night, filling the apartment with smoke. He showed no interest in his daughter, in fact. He seemed to resent the baby for taking away Iana's attention and time. His focus remained solely on his own physical needs. Shockingly, just days after childbirth, he pressured Iana into intimacy, even openly threatening, "If you don't, I'll hurt you." Police later discovered that during Iana's pregnancy, Blake had been seeing 3 different women at the same time aside from his ex-wife, Amanda Braun. One of them was a woman named Bucky Florio. She testified that on their very first date, Blake assaulted her and transmitted an illness to her. She even took him to court. Yet, surprisingly, she later forgave him and became his secret lover. To make their affair easier, Blake set her up in one of his other apartments, all while still maintaining ties with Amanda. Iana's mother told police that even though she hadn't been in Los Angeles long, she quickly realized that Blake was a controlling and dangerous man. She urged her daughter to move out and live with her instead, but Iana chose to return to him, perhaps because she couldn't bring herself to give up on the relationship. 2 days before her death, on May 24, 2016, Iana was shopping at a mall with her mother. After receiving a message, she grew restless and rushed off to meet Blake. No one realized then that this would be the last time she was ever seen alive. Prosecutors believed Blake's motive was rooted in jealousy and resentment toward his newborn daughter. The arrival of Diana had made him feel like he was losing control over his girlfriend, fueling his violent impulses. But was he truly reckless enough to throw away his future over a moment of rage? The sheer brutality of the crime didn't resemble the actions of an amateur. It was more in line with the work of a seasoned serial predator. On this point, police quickly found their answer. Blake was a graphic novelist. In 2010, he had published a dark and disturbing graphic novel titled Syndrome. Its content was violent and unsettling, and its cover featured a headless doll. The story began with the chilling question: if you enjoyed hurting others, what would you do? And ended with the haunting line: we all become monsters, accompanied by the image of a bloody hand. Eerily, the details of Iana Kasian's murder were nearly identical to scenes from Blake Libel's graphic novel Syndrome. In the book, one illustration depicts a woman lying on a bed soaked in blood, her scalp completely stripped. Friends of Blake revealed that since childhood, he had been obsessed with crime stories, particularly gruesome tales of Hollywood murders. Whether in movies or literature, he always gravitated toward the darkest themes. Some investigators believed another motive for the crime was his desire to bring his twisted fiction to life. Blake had even planned his escape, carefully cleaning the West Hollywood apartment and hiding $4,000 in cash along with his passport in his pants. If not for the tireless efforts of Olga Kasian, he might have fled to Canada. In June 2018, after nearly 2 years of investigation, Hollywood's most horrifying case finally went to trial. To everyone's surprise, Blake Libel appeared in court looking significantly heavier, proof that he had been living comfortably during his time in custody. He still insisted on his innocence, just as he had from the beginning, even attempting to claim mental illness to delay the proceedings. But psychiatric evaluations confirmed he was perfectly sane. The trial lasted 6 days, with the prosecution presenting 14 witnesses and numerous pieces of evidence. Blake's guilt was undeniable. In court, prosecutors declared that his acts of cruelty and the extreme level of violence he used were beyond words, something no ordinary person could commit. They argued that he had meticulously planned the murder based on his own graphic novel, Syndrome. Forensic experts also testified that the brutality of the case had set a grim precedent in terms of the severity of the injuries inflicted. On the 26th of June, 2018, it took the jury only 3 hours to unanimously convict Blake Libel of first-degree murder, torture, aggravated mayhem, and other charges. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Upon hearing the verdict, Olga broke down in tears. She had waited far too long for this moment. She often clutched her daughter's photo, crying, "My daughter was tortured so cruelly. He must be punished." Despite coming from a wealthy and influential family, only his brother Cody Libel showed up in court during the trial. The rest of his relatives appeared to have completely turned their backs on him. The question of custody over little Diana was hotly debated. Though she was Blake's daughter and legally entitled to inheritance, custody was ultimately granted to her grandmother, Olga. While Iana had always hoped her daughter would grow up in America, her untimely death and Olga's limited means to remain in the US forced her to take Diana back to Ukraine. In a civil lawsuit against Blake, the court ordered him to pay Olga $41.6 million in damages for her daughter's death and the cost of raising her granddaughter. Yet Olga later revealed she had never received this compensation. Rumors suggested that Blake's family reached a private settlement with her, though the exact amount was never disclosed. In the end, I must say that Iana's tragedy might have been preventable. Her mother sensed something was terribly wrong from the very beginning. Based on forensic estimates of the time of death, it's possible that Iana was still alive when Olga first called the police on May 25, 2016. Sadly, law enforcement failed to treat the case seriously, missing the critical window to save her. During the brutal ordeal, Iana made loud noises and screamed. In later interviews, many neighbors admitted they had heard a woman's cries but chose not to call the police. That silence cost Iana her only chance at survival, leaving her to a cruel fate. And that brings us to the end of today's case. What are your thoughts on this chilling story? Share your opinion in the comments below. And before you go, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next true crime story we cover on this channel.